It was raining that afternoon, the kind of drizzle that soaks your clothes slowly like the day itself is tired and sad. The tiny bell above the door jingled weakly as Maya pushed it open, her 5-year-old son clinging tightly to her hand. He was shivering, his little Spider-Man hoodie no match for the cold. She gave him a soft smile and brushed the wet strands of hair off his forehead. "Just a quick bite, baby," she whispered, kneeling to his level. "Then we'll go home and watch cartoons, all right?" He nodded, still too tired to talk. Maya stood up and glanced around. The place was warm, golden lights casting a cozy glow over polished wooden tables. It was one of those casual restaurants that felt like a step above fast food, clean, nice, but not fancy enough to break your wallet. She had passed by this place dozens of times on her way to work. Today was the first time she dared step inside. She knew she couldn't afford a full meal. Her shift at the hotel ended late, and her paycheck was already stretched thin: rent, daycare, food, bills. Always too much month at the end of the money. But her son hadn't eaten anything since breakfast, and she couldn't bear to make him wait another few hours till dinner at home. She gently pulled him toward an empty booth near the corner, ignoring the curious glance from a sharply dressed man who sat alone a few tables away. He looked out of place here, clean shave, expensive coat, and a laptop opened in front of him, half-finished latte steaming beside it. But Maya paid him no mind. Her focus was on her son, who slid into the booth with a tired sigh. A young waiter with a warm smile came over and she asked shyly, "Could I just get a kid's grilled cheese, please? And maybe a cup of water?" The waiter nodded and disappeared, no judgment in his eyes. But then came him. The manager. Slick hair, tight tie, and the kind of walk that screamed ego louder than words ever could. He didn't say, "Excuse me," or "Ma'am." He didn't even ask if everything was all right. He just marched straight over and stopped at her table with a scowl already plastered on his face. "You ordering just one meal?" he asked, arms crossed. Maya blinked, confused. "Yes, my son just needs something to eat." "This is not a waiting area, miss. You can't just sit here and loiter with water and one sandwich." "I wasn't planning to stay long." "You've been here 10 minutes, he cut her off, voice rising. "You're taking up a table someone else could be using. This is a restaurant, not a shelter." Her face burned. She could feel every eye in the place turned toward them, like the quiet suddenly got louder. Her son looked up at her, wide-eyed, confused and scared. I'm sorry," she stammered. "He's just hungry and I thought. Maybe next time think before you come in here and waste everyone's time," he snapped. "If you can't afford to eat properly, maybe don't come at all." The words hit harder than a slap. Maya clenched her fists beneath the table. Her throat was tight. Her dignity, already paper-thin from the week she'd had, felt like it had just been shredded in front of strangers. Then someone stood up. The man with the laptop. The one who hadn't said a word till now. He closed his computer slowly, took off his coat and laid it across his chair with the kind of calm that made you nervous. He walked over to the table, his eyes never leaving the manager's. "Is this how you talk to customers in my restaurant?" he asked quietly. The manager frowned, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "I said," the man repeated, his voice colder now, "is this how you treat people when you think no one important is watching?" The room went completely silent. The waiter stopped mid-step. A couple sipping wine put their glasses down. Even the kitchen staff paused in the back. The manager stuttered, Who are you?" The man extended his hand to Maya gently, like she was royalty. "I'm the CO." Maya didn't move at first. Her fingers were still wrapped tightly around her son's tiny hand, and her legs felt like stone. The room had frozen. No clattering dishes, no background music, no chatter. Just silence and heat. The kind of heat that comes from humiliation being burned out by justice. The manager's face went pale. "Wait, you're him?" he said, the arrogance draining from his voice like someone had pulled the plug on his power. The man gave a tight nod. "Jonathan Price. Founder. Owner. CO." He looked the manager dead in the eyes. "And right now?" Furious. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had no idea what was happening. This man in a designer coat, with perfect shoes and that laptop, he owned the whole place? She'd been humiliated in front of him? "I'm so sorry, Mr. Price," the manager mumbled, starting to straighten his tie like it would save him. "I didn't recognize you, That much is obvious," Jonathan cut in. "You were too busy barking at a mother who was just trying to feed her child." The manager took a step back. "I didn't mean." "You meant exactly what you said." Jonathan's voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. "You meant it because no one was watching. Because you thought you had the right to talk to her like that. Maya's lip trembled. Her son held her hand tighter, sensing everything but understanding nothing. She reached across the table and cradled his cheek to calm him. Jonathan finally turned to her, and for the first time, his expression softened. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice, "I want to sincerely apologize for what you just went through. You didn't deserve that. Not here. Not ever." Maya stood slowly. "It's okay, No," he interrupted gently. "It's not okay. I built this company to be different. A place where people felt welcome, respected, especially families." His eyes flicked toward her son. "And especially kids." The manager looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Jonathan took out his wallet and handed a black card to the waiter who was still frozen near the kitchen door. "Take care of their meal. Anything she or her son wants is on me. And bring out a dessert too, something fun." The waiter nodded, eyes wide. "Yes, sir." Jonathan looked back at Maya. "You mind if I sit?" She hesitated, then slowly nodded. He pulled up a chair next to her and leaned forward, like he was suddenly just another guy trying to make sense of things. "Truth is, I do this from time to time. Go undercover. Sit in my restaurants, see how things really run when the name on the wall isn't watching." Maya managed a weak smile. "Guess you got more than you bargained for today." He chuckled dryly. "That's putting it mildly." Across the room, the manager tried to slink away toward the kitchen, but Jonathan's eyes snapped toward him. "Don't move." The tone was soft, but everyone heard the warning in it. Jonathan turned back to Maya. "I'd like to hear what happened. From you. Not the edited version he's probably scrambling to come up with in his head." She hesitated. I didn't want to make trouble." "You didn't," Jonathan said. "He did." So she told him. Everything. How she walked in from the rain. How she could only afford one kid's meal. How she tried to keep it quiet, keep her head down. And then how the manager had come over, loud, cruel, shaming her like she was trash on the floor. Jonathan didn't interrupt once. He listened. Really listened. When she finished, he looked toward the manager again. "You're done?" he said calmly. The manager blinked. I didn't. Please, Mr. Price, it was just a misunderstanding. You yelled at a woman in front of her child. You mocked her for ordering a kid's meal. You told her she didn't belong here. And the worst part." Jonathan stood up slowly, towering over him. "You thought no one would care." He turned to the waiter. "Have security walk him out." Two large men emerged from the back, silent and fast. The manager didn't fight it. He just hung his head and let them escort him out. Maya looked up at Jonathan. "You didn't have to do that." He looked back down at her with something like guilt in his eyes. "Yes, I did. Because people like him survive in silence. And today I got loud." The restaurant had started to breathe again. Quiet chatter resumed, cautiously at first, like the walls themselves were trying to make sense of what had just happened. Maya still felt the weight of it pressing on her chest. The humiliation, the anger, the disbelief. But also, something else. Relief maybe. Or gratitude. She wasn't sure. Her son was already nibbling on the grilled cheese, smiling as the waiter brought over a giant brownie sundae covered in whipped cream and sprinkles. It was more sugar than she'd let him eat in a week, but she didn't stop him. Not today. Jonathan still sat across from her, no laptop now, no distractions. Just him. Watching. Listening. Like he wanted to be here. Like he needed to be. "I appreciate you listening," she said softly. "I didn't expect any of this." He leaned back, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Can I ask something personal?" Maya raised an eyebrow, unsure. "That depends." "What's your story?" he asked. "You walked in here today with the kind of quiet strength I rarely see. Most people in your position would have snapped back or broken down. But you just took it. Why?" She looked down at her hands, chewing the inside of her cheek. She didn't want to spill everything, but somehow with him, it felt okay to open up. Maybe it was because he actually cared. Maybe because he saw what others chose to ignore. "I was married," she started slowly. 5 years. He left right after our son turned 2. No warning. Just gone. I had no job, no savings. I was a stay-at-home mom trying to build a family. Suddenly, I was trying to build a survival plan. Jonathan nodded slowly, not pushing. "I got a job cleaning hotel rooms," she continued. "Minimum wage. Crappy hours. No benefits. But it's work and it's honest." She glanced at her son, who was now drawing in the chocolate syrup with his spoon. "Everything I do is for him. Every dollar, every breath." Jonathan exhaled slowly, like her words had landed hard. "You ever think about leaving the city?" Can't afford it, she said flatly. Rent's bad everywhere and I don't have a car. My mom lives upstate but she's sick. Cancer. And I send her whatever I can. Which usually means nothing. Jonathan leaned forward. You're carrying more than most CEOs I know. She gave a small bitter laugh. They probably don't clean toilets after dropping their kid off at daycare. There was a pause. Then he said something she didn't expect. I want to offer you a job. She blinked. What? I'm not saying this out of pity, he added quickly. You've got grit. Real grit. I saw it in how you handled that manager and how you kept your composure for your son's sake. We need people like that. People who understand struggle. Empathy. Maya stared at him, trying to read his face. What kind of job? I run an internal program, he explained. We train single parents, people from rough backgrounds for leadership roles. Assistant manager, then hire. We don't just throw you into the fire, we build you up. Support you. And we pay well. She didn't know what to say. Her throat tightened again, but for a different reason now. This wasn't pity. This was possibility. You're serious? She whispered. Completely. He reached into his coat, pulled out a sleek business card and slid it across the table. Call that number tomorrow. Say my name. You'll be fast-tracked. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. The card felt heavier than paper. Like it carried something more than ink. Maybe hope. But what if I fail? She asked, voice cracking just a little. He smiled. Then we teach you. Again and again. Until you don't. Her son reached across the table and held her hand again, like he somehow knew things were shifting. Maya exhaled, deeply this time, like her lungs were finally learning to breathe again. That night, Maya lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling of her small one-bedroom apartment. Her son was fast asleep on the other side of the room, curled up with the same faded blue blanket he'd had since he was a baby. The soft hum of a street lamp buzzed through the window, casting a pale orange glow over the cracked walls. The business card rested on the nightstand, perfectly placed like it might vanish if she blinked. She'd read it a dozen times already, memorized the embossed name, Jonathan Price, founder and CEO, like it was some kind of sacred artifact. She didn't know if she was more excited or scared. She'd been surviving for so long she forgot what opportunity even looked like. There had been no open doors for her, only walls, wall after wall after wall. Now suddenly this man she didn't know, this powerful stranger who'd watched her at her worst, was giving her a chance. A real one. But still, what if she blew it? She wasn't educated. She hadn't finished college. She'd been cleaning toilets and flipping sheets for the last 3 years. She knew hard work, yes, but not management. Not corporate life. Not whatever world he lived in. But something in her gut told her this was different. That this wasn't a handout, it was a challenge. A dare from the universe to finally stop crawling and stand. The next morning she called the number. She was scheduled for an interview the very next day, at the company's downtown headquarters. They even sent a car to pick her up. Black SUV. Clean. Professional. The driver even opened the door for her. She hadn't felt that important in years. At the front desk, a young woman smiled warmly and said, Miss Torres? We've been expecting you. Maya Torres. She hadn't heard her name said like that, like it mattered, in a long time. They gave her a tour of the office first. Glass walls. Open floors. Sleek design. A kitchen stocked with food not just for employees but for their families. Pictures of community events. Training boards with photos of graduates, single moms, veterans, ex-cons, all smiling in suits and blazers. It wasn't just talk. They meant it. Then came the interview. It wasn't like any interview she'd ever heard of. No trick questions. No cold glares. Just a panel of 3 people, 2 women and a man, who asked her one thing. What drives you? She almost cried. And she told them. About her son. About the hospital bills from her mother. About the fear of running out of diapers. About the embarrassment of counting coins at the grocery store. About that day in the restaurant and the voice that told her to just swallow the pain and keep moving. When she finished, they didn't say much. Just smiled, nodded, and said someone would be in touch. 2 hours later, she got the call. You're in. She dropped the phone. Her son came running from the other room. Mommy? What happened? She scooped him up and spun him in the air, laughing and crying at the same time. Baby, I think Mommy got a real job. From that moment, everything changed. Her schedule was tough. The training was intense. There were times she wanted to quit. She doubted herself constantly, compared herself to the others, felt like a fraud. But every time she came home and looked into her son's eyes, She remembered why she was doing it. And once, during a coffee break, Jonathan walked past her in the office. He didn't just nod or wave. He stopped. "Proud of you," he said, just loud enough for her to hear. "Told you had it in you." She smiled. "I'm just getting started." The weeks turned into months and Maya started to walk differently. It wasn't just her posture, it was her energy. She held her head higher. She spoke with more confidence. She stopped apologizing before she talked. For the first time in years, she wasn't surviving. She was becoming. The leadership training pushed her hard. She learned about budgeting, scheduling, supply chain logistics, how to handle customer complaints, and how to run a shift when half your team didn't show up. At first, the numbers confused her. The computer systems were overwhelming. But every time she struggled, there was someone there, mentoring her, guiding her, never letting her drown. And when her first monthly evaluation came in, her instructor pulled her aside. "You're ahead of schedule," he said. "Most people take 3 months to grasp what you just did in one." She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and smiled, but that night she allowed herself something rare. She bought her son a small toy dinosaur from the drugstore on the way home. $3. But he lit up like it was Christmas. "This is Successosaurus," he shouted, running around the apartment. "He's Mommy's Dino." That toy sat on her dresser from then on. Meanwhile, the city buzzed with rumors. The video of the restaurant incident, captured quietly by a teenage girl at the next table, had gone viral. Undercover CEO witnesses manager humiliates single mom. The internet exploded. Some praised Jonathan Price for stepping in. Others were furious it took a CEO to make people care. But almost everyone agreed on one thing: Maya's strength, her quiet grace in the face of public shame, had moved them deeply. Someone even started a fundraiser for her. Over $20,000 raised in 2 days. She used it to pay off her mom's hospital debt, bought her a second-hand recliner, and got her son a new jacket, one that could finally keep out the cold. But not everyone was happy. One afternoon after training, as she stepped out of the building to catch the bus home, she heard someone call her name. "Maya." She turned. It was him. The manager. Clean-shaven, suit slightly wrinkled, but still full of that same slick arrogance. Only now it was cracked. Bitter. "What do you want?" she asked, instantly guarded. He smirked. "Just came to congratulate you. Big shot now, huh?" She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "You think any of this lasts? You think you belong here? You're a charity case. PR move. Once the cameras stop, they'll toss you out like yesterday's garbage." Her heart pounded, but her face didn't show it. "You're angry," she said calmly, "because I didn't disappear. Because your words didn't break me. But here I am." He rolled his eyes. "Enjoy it while it lasts." "Don't worry," she said, stepping past him. "I intend to." She didn't look back. That night she told Jonathan about the run-in. He listened, then leaned back in his chair. "You know," he said, "I could have security file a report. Keep him off company property for good." She shook her head. "Let him talk. Let him watch. I want him to see what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman." Jonathan smiled. "You're starting to sound like a leader." 2 months later, Maya stood in front of a staff meeting, her first as an official assistant manager. She wore the company-issued blazer with her name tag pinned neatly above her heart. The same heart that once trembled from fear now beat steady with purpose. The staff, a mix of part-timers, college kids, and seasoned cooks, watched her with quiet respect. Not just because of the title, but because of the way she carried it. "All I ask is simple," she said, her voice clear. "Treat every customer like they matter. Because they do. And treat each other like teammates, not competition. We rise together or not at all." She paused, letting the silence work in her favor. "If you've got a problem, don't hide it. We fix things here, we don't bury them." Someone clapped. Then a few more. The room filled with applause. She smiled just a little. It felt earned. Later that day she walked the floor of her assigned store. She had requested the same location where it all started, the place where she'd been humiliated in front of her son. It had been cleaned up since then. New staff. New energy. Her energy. The same waiter who had served her that day, Ryan, now greeted her with a fist bump. "Place runs smoother with you around, boss," he grinned. "Don't call me boss yet," she chuckled. "Not till I learn how to fix that soda machine without calling maintenance." But it wasn't just machines she was fixing. She'd implemented small changes. A community meal card system for struggling families, free meals for kids on weekends, even a quiet corner with books and crayons for single parents who needed 5 minutes of peace. She didn't ask permission, she just made it work with the budget she had. Word spread fast. Families started choosing her location. Reviews online mentioned her by name. Local bloggers called it the restaurant with a heart. Even a city council member stopped by to thank her for her compassion. But with the praise came pressure. One evening, after closing, she sat alone in the office staring at the weekly numbers. Sales were good. Staff retention was strong. But something was nagging at her. The company's regional director had left her a note. Corporate wants to cut weekend hours. Cost-saving measure. Need your input. She stared at it for 10 full minutes. Cutting hours would save money, yes, but it would also leave her staff scrambling, especially the single parents and students who relied on those extra shifts. It would mean fewer meals for families who already counted every dollar. Her phone buzzed. Jonathan. She picked up, unsure. Read the note? He asked, always direct. Yeah, she said. And I don't like it. Why? Because it's lazy, she replied. We're profitable. People love us. Cutting hours punishes the people who made this place better. That's not cost saving, it's people wasting. Silence. Then a chuckle. Write me a counter plan, he said. Show me how you'll save the same amount, without hurting your team. She blinked. You're serious? Dead serious. You're not just a symbol anymore, Maya. You're running this place. Time to act like it. So she did. She spent the next 2 nights reviewing inventory, supplier contracts, waste management numbers, stuff she never thought she'd understand. But she did. She learned. And she built a plan. One that saved more than the original cut and added weekend community events instead of removing them. She sent it to Jonathan with a single-line email, told you I'm just getting started. His reply? A simple thumbs-up emoji and, promotion review coming soon. She stared at those words for a long time. Not because of what they meant for her career, but because of what they meant for every single woman who ever thought rock bottom was the end of the road. It wasn't. Not for her. The night of the promotion review, Maya barely slept. She wasn't nervous, not exactly. But the moment carried weight. Not because she craved a title or a better paycheck, though those things mattered. But because getting promoted meant validation. It meant everything she'd fought for, every humiliation, every sleepless night, every hour of grinding without thanks, meant something. She stood in front of a polished glass door on the top floor of the company's headquarters. The same door she once walked through as a trainee, heart pounding, hands trembling. Today her hand was steady as she knocked. Jonathan looked up from behind his desk, smiled. Come in, Miss Torres. He didn't waste time. He never did. You've exceeded every benchmark, he said, flipping through a folder. Customer satisfaction is at an all-time high. Your staff retention rate is the best in the region. And you've made more policy improvements than half my executive team. Maya stayed quiet, letting him speak. But what impresses me most, he said, locking eyes with her, isn't what's on paper. It's how your people talk about you. The way they look at you. You lead from the ground, not the clouds. She felt a tightness in her chest, emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel yet. Not until now. So, he said, standing and extending his hand, congratulations. As of today, you're officially our regional training director. You'll oversee 6 locations and train every new manager we hire. Maya didn't reach for his hand immediately. She blinked, stunned. I thought this was just a review, she said. He smiled. It was. I reviewed you. You passed. She shook his hand, her grip strong, her voice steadier than she thought possible. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know, he said. That's why I chose you. On the elevator ride down, Maya looked at her reflection in the metal walls. She didn't look like the scared, shamed woman from the restaurant anymore. She looked like someone who belonged here. And she wasn't alone. The company had started hiring more people like her. Single mothers, immigrants, folks with records, people written off by society. She became their mentor, their coach, the proof that where you start doesn't define where you finish. But not everyone was ready to cheer. One day during a district-wide meeting, she spotted him again, the former manager. He wasn't working. Just lingering near the sidewalk outside the building, hands in his pockets, bitterness in his eyes. Their eyes met. She didn't flinch. He sneered, then walked away. This time she didn't feel fear or anger. Just pity. He was still stuck in the moment he tried to break her. But she had built a future from it. Later that evening she sat with her son in their new apartment. A 2-bedroom with space, light, and most importantly, peace. He was doing homework at the table while she read through a staff evaluation on her laptop. Mommy? He asked without looking up. Yeah, baby? Are you the boss now? She smiled, reached over to ruffle his hair. Kind of. But I like to think I'm the helper-in-chief. He giggled, then turned serious. Does that mean we don't have to be scared anymore? Her eyes watered, but she didn't let the tears fall. She knelt beside him, wrapped her arms around his tiny shoulders and whispered, "No, baby. We're not scared anymore. Not of being broke. Not of being ignored. Not of being stepped on." Because they had survived the worst day of their lives, and turned it into a beginning. The following year, Maya stood on stage at a national conference hosted by the company. Over 500 employees from around the country sat in the audience. Managers, team leads, corporate partners, even news outlets. Cameras flashed. Lights beamed down. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. Jonathan had personally invited her to give the keynote. Not because she was polished or perfect, but because her story had moved people. Because she'd become living proof of what second chances, real second chances, could do. She stepped up to the podium, took a breath, and began. A little over a year ago, I walked into one of our restaurants soaking wet, with a hungry child and barely $5 to my name. A murmur swept through the crowd. Some already knew the story. Some didn't. All of them listened. I ordered one kid's meal. No drink for myself. I just wanted to feed my son and rest for 5 minutes. Instead, I was humiliated in front of a room full of strangers. Told I didn't belong. That I was wasting space. She paused, letting the words settle. But someone else was in that room that day. A man I didn't recognize. A man who didn't let it slide. A man who looked past my clothes, my wallet, my situation, and saw a person. Jonathan, seated in the front row, gave her a slow nod. That moment changed my life, she continued. Not because someone swooped in to save me, but because someone reminded me I mattered. That I had worth even when life tried to strip it away. The room was silent, locked onto her every word. But this story isn't just about me, she said. It's about every employee who's been overlooked, every parent who's had to choose between gas and groceries, every person who's ever walked into a place and prayed no one would see how tired they are. She took a breath, steadied herself. I used to think success looked like power suits and perfect resumes. But now I know. Success looks like survival, resilience, and the ability to rise again, even when the world tries to keep you down. The applause started small, then swelled into a standing ovation. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she didn't cry. Not here. Not now. After the speech, dozens of employees approached her. Some hugged her. Some just said thank you. And one woman, an older janitor from a Midwest location, grabbed her hand with shaking fingers and whispered, "I thought I was too old to start over. You proved me wrong." Maya held her hand tight and replied, "It's never too late. Not if you still believe you've got something left to give." Weeks later, her story was featured in a national magazine. They titled it, "The Woman Who Changed the Company from the Bottom Up." But Maya didn't let it get to her head. She still arrived early to team meetings. Still asked new hires how their day was going. Still packed her son's lunch every morning with a sticky note that read, "You are strong. You are kind. You are enough." Because that's what she wanted him to remember most. Not the pain. Not the hunger. Not the man who yelled at her in front of everyone. But the fight. The fire. And the fact that one woman, just trying to feed her son, stood tall when the world tried to crush her, and won. The end.